It was summer of 2003 or 2004 when I bought the Sticks and Stones album from New Found Glory. My family was going on a road trip to Michigan, which was a full day of driving for us, and I was pumped to have a new CD to throw into my Walkman while I sat in the third row of our old Toyota Land Cruiser. And I just blocked the world away with music. What I didn't know at the time was that CD case held a bonus disc with a bunch of singles from artists on the same label. Lo and behold, my discovery of Finch. I must have played What It Is to Burn 200 times on that drive. It was the first song I'd ever heard with any kind of screaming in it, and it led me down a road to heavy music that at the time I wasn't even aware existed. Alright, so who is Finch, and where did this song come from? It's 2002, and the band's from Temecula, California, which if you've never been is inland. It's about an hour from anywhere notable, and it's mostly a place that you drive through on the way to San Diego. Or a place that you randomly heard from that Netflix show, Rust to Riches, the Gotham Garage one. It's pretty badass. The band forms in 1999, which means they're all still in high school, but at the time they hadn't settled on Finch yet, and they were called Numb. Nate Barklow had straight up described that version of the band as like a Deftones ripoff, which became a huge influence on that record later on, and the whole reason that they're screaming on this record at all. Randy Strohmeyer, one of the guitar players, had been writing fan mail to Richard Rhines. He's the guy who ran Drive-Thru Records for years before any of this, just as like a kid who liked the label. And they ended up being friends, and that friendship is how the band got put on a drive-thru showcase in Anaheim. Which just goes to show you, it can really just pay off to love the scene that you're in. So there wasn't a huge crowd that discovered this band because they saw them live. Most either got like a burned CD with the name written on it, or like me, a compilation from some marketing tool. You didn't have a picture of them, you didn't know how old they were, you really didn't know anything about the band. You just had the songs. And I actually think that's a huge part of why records from back then sit differently for people my age. You didn't really know much about the band, and if you did, you had to dig for it. Now, the guy who produced this was Mark Trombino, which, if you came up on this stuff, the name does a lot of work on its own. I mean, he did Jimmy Eat World Clarity, the guy did Dude Ranch. You know he has his own sound. Everything's tight and dry, right up in the front of the speaker, with literally nowhere to hide. But like most nostalgic memories, things are always better in your head than in reality, and this song's really no exception. But at some point, it occurred to me, hey, I have a studio. I know how to remake this, so that's what this is. I rebuilt the chorus to see if I could make it sound just like my childhood memory, and for what it's worth, I do this for a living. I produce and mix records, so I can try to do stupid things like this, and I did have to leave the vocals off for copyright reasons, which honestly made it a lot more challenging because his voice carries so much emotion in this song. So I'm already starting this thing down a whole instrument, and arguably one that carries most of the weight, which means everything underneath has to work harder than it did on the record. And that starts with the drums. And the drums here are interesting to me for a reason that isn't really about the drummer. Trombino played drums. He was in Drive Like Jehu, and you can hear that on everything he touched because drummers who produce records do drums a really specific way. These drums have a lot less room than modern records, and in fact, a big thing back then was compressing the reverb so that you got like a bloomy sound after the snare. Something that really stuck out though was usually drummers place the snare panning a little to the left when they become producers. This is something that engineers call drummer's perspective, where audience perspective would be to the right because that's how they hear the kit in their head. He put it right down the middle. But in 2002, his style of drums was also the right call. This was going on a CD, in a car, or through a Walkman with the bass boost on, and low end was not really the full assignment. Nobody was mixing for people with headphones that went down to 20 hertz because those people didn't exist yet. So I wanted to update all of that, keep it dry, keep it close, don't turn it into a huge stadium, but maybe add a touch more depth because I wanted to have body on it. The way it sits right now, it just kind of pats you, and in my head it sits so much harder than that. The kick and the snare come off onto their own tracks so I can work on them separately, and then there's a second more live sounding kick and snare underneath the whole time, which is the thing I do basically on everything now. Add a little bit of saturation over the top, and then honestly the boring stuff does most of the heavy lifting. Volume, velocity, panning, and that's the file that I'm going to give away this week. It's the MIDI drums for the chorus. It's my version of it, not the official one. It's free, links in the description. And if you do something with it, throw that in the Discord. That's where I actually get to hear your stuff and throw you some feedback if you want it. And now that there's actually weight down there, our bass has a problem because the bass on this record is doing exactly what bass did in 2002, which is agreeing with the guitar the entire time, enthusiastically, which again is how it's played on stage. And if I'm building a floor, I'd rather the bass actually be the floor than a second guitar. So it stops following and it gets its own hangout underneath the whole thing. So now with the floor under it, I'm thinking the guitar should be the easy part. And that is genuinely what I thought going in. Randy Strohmeyer and Alex Linares, I'm probably saying his last name wrong, are doing the thing that makes this whole era work, which is two guitars that aren't playing the same shape. One's holding down the fort, the other one's ringing over the top, 4 tracks, 2 parts, which as someone recreating this can be a little frustrating to figure out. I like to challenge myself and do everything by ear, so sometimes figuring out the parts when they're jammed together in this era doesn't go so well. And let's be honest, tabs are for people that stare at the picture on the box the whole time that they put a jigsaw puzzle together. And there's a reason that these two parts sit so differently, which I found out after the fact and kind of wish I knew going in. Linares played Les Pauls and Strohmeyer played Strats, which that's it, that's the whole trick. Foundation's Les Paul and ringing out over top is a Strat, and I spent way too long trying to make one Telecaster do both of those jobs before that clicked. So for guitars, I used Petrucci X for the wall, something with less gain and more top end for the part that rings out. I started with Nolly, but I wasn't really satisfied with the body I was getting from it, and I went back and forth on that one for a while, but sometimes you just have to make the choice. Now it's a good sounding chorus, it's tight, it's modern, everything where I'd put it on a record I was getting paid for. It just wasn't the song that was in my head anymore. And it took me a couple days to work out that I'd been chasing the wrong thing the entire time, because the version I remember isn't a better produced version of the song. It's the song heard by the kid in the third row of a Land Cruiser who'd never heard anybody scream before. So I actually went back and put some of the 2002 back into the song, pulled the low end off the guitars a little bit, let them get thinner and meaner, let the drums dry up a little bit instead of pushing them so much. I made it worse on paper, which is funny to me because Linares said years later that Trombino makes really great records, but that it was becoming apparent he almost makes the same record every time. And honestly, if I'd played on it, I'd probably feel the same way, but I didn't play on it. I'm the kid who got handed a sampler, and the same record is exactly what I was trying to get back to, which leaves the thing I said at the top, and it's the one part of this that I couldn't solve, the vocals. I tried for what it's worth. The first thing I did was track myself singing the vocal melody because that's what you do, and I sounded like a crappy cover artist. Then I tried a guitar lead to follow his melody, and that sounded shitty, and I was about to try a third thing when I decided that every one of these is just trying to cover for him, and I can't. It's a guy screaming about something real in 2002 that there really is no fix for that. And it's not nothing he was screaming about either. Barclay said the song is written like a letter from hell. It's the actual concept. It's a guy in hell writing to somebody he loves. And I didn't know that when I was 13. I just knew it sounded like he meant it. You're not getting that out of a guitar. So I stopped and I left it open. Nothing moves into that space now. No fill, no lead, no clever little answer. The band just plays and leaves the hole where he was. And I'll be honest, I decided at that point that the version of the song I'd been chasing was never really about remaking it. It was about being 13 and hearing somebody scream for the first time and not knowing that that was allowed. And also the journey of remaking one of the most pivotal songs of my childhood and getting to dissect and study it in a way that gives me more of an appreciation of the art that this song really is. Anyways, here's the chorus finished. It's as close as the one that's in my head that I'm gonna get. You can tell me you sang it at least in your head, be honest. I would love for you to leave a comment and tell me what song made an impact like this on you as a kid. A moment where you discovered something about music that just helped shaped your listening habits to this day. The drum MIDI's in the description, the Discord's under that, and there's going to be another one of these every other Wednesday. At the end of the day, I don't actually think I got it. I got a really good sounding version of a song that I love, and the one I'm chasing is honestly still in the back of that Land Cruiser somewhere. And that's not going to come out of a studio, which is fine. That's kind of what the good ones do to you.